everyone, it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, What Cass Read. Today, we're bringing back the Wheel of TBR. You know, before the great reading slump of 2020 plummeted my reading, I had managed to get 2 months worth of the Wheel of TBR up here, and now let's bring it back. I'm back in the swing of reading, I'm back in the groove, and you all seem to love the wheel, so let's get to it. Let's review the rules. Okay, I spin the wheel 6 times. Anytime the wheel lands on red, that means I have to respin and add 1 more book to my TBR. Ugh, I've been learning more and more to hate the red slots. Not gonna lie. The punishment for not reading all of my books on this Wheel of TBR is that for every book that I do not finish is 1 week that I cannot purchase any new books, which for me is a problem, and so that's a really good solution. And then that means that I don't have to like continually keep adding more books to my TBR, because that would just compound the problem of not finishing. Now there's some lengthy books that I ended up picking out for this month, so I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty nervous. I am pretty nervous about this. Okay, so when it landed on my lowest rated book, or like lowest rated TBR, I got a little nervous to see what that would end up being, and I looked on Goodreads to see what book I owned a physical copy of, because I didn't want to have to like go out and search a book on my TBR that was super low rated and purchase that. This is a book that I have been meaning to get to. It was a hyped book for me when this book came out. This is a book that's also a part of my Goodreads reading challenge, which I really need to get back on the bandwagon with that. So why not get started with this one as well? But I've been putting this one off because it does kind of freak me out. It does kind of scare me just based off of the low ratings, the reviews that I've seen people. It's a pretty mixed bag. I've heard there's a lot of like content warnings. So it does make me a little bit wary, and that's why I haven't gotten to it yet. This is a fictionalized African-inspired fantasy world. This man named Tracker is trying to track down a lost child, but obviously there's much more to it than that. Because it's part of the Goodreads challenge that I have, yeah, I really should get back into gear with that, and then the wheel spoke, so this ended up being the lowest rated physical TBR book that I have on my shelf. What are you doing?
Putting the ice back.
You're getting your beer all set up.
Are you filming me?
Yes, I need you to do me a favor. I was filming my Wheel of TBR, and the wheel landed on Tim's pick, so you have to pick a book for me to read.
Read all these. Well, it's summertime. You have a very wintry collection. Oh. Here we go.
Good choice. Alright, so you saw me spin in that clip. We had Tim's pick. I managed to catch him off guard because he had literally just gotten back from work and had no idea that I was asking him to pick a book for me. But he picked a good one, so this is Fortuna Sworn, written by KJ Sutton. This is one of the newer books that I ended up hauling in my most recent mid-year book haul. This was entirely inspired by Becca in the Books and Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction. This is a super dark fae story. It's like, Fortuna Sworn is a very specific type of dark creature. She has to enter into this dark world. That's all I know. Very, very brief description of this. But I did have Ashley also let me know that she wants to know literally every thought that I have while I read this book. So I don't know if I'm gonna vlog this one. That might be kind of fun. You know, it's so hard when I'm working all the time, but I can manage to put something together, right? So maybe I'll vlog this one. Stay tuned. Alright, most recent purchase. I did end up looking on Amazon to see what was my most recent purchase, and that actually surprised me. It also surprised me that I ended up picking up this book to begin with. So that is The Clockwork Prince, written by Cassandra Clare. This is book number 2 of the Infernal Devices trilogy. I picked up Clockwork Angel, which was book number 1 of this trilogy, in my June TBR. Damn it, Cassandra Clare, like, I don't particularly like her writing, and I can see where this is going. This is such a love triangle setup. But I really enjoy the concept of the Shadow Hunters. I really enjoy these types of powers. And I read through like the first 5 books of the Mortal Instrument series before calling it quits on the 6th book, which is why this is such a surprise that I ended up going for this book to begin with. Tessa Gray, our main protagonist from book number 1, finds herself in Victorian London. Her brother went missing. She was trying to go to find him. Her family back home has all passed away, and then she gets embroiled in the world of the Shadow Hunters. She does herself possess a shape-shifting power, which is kind of how she gets embroiled in with the Shadow Hunters to begin with. So we continue on with this story here. Okay, the next book is obviously going to be an underrated read on my shelf, and this was really interesting for me to try and like figure out like what could be considered an underrated read. But I think I have one that I know like so many people know about, but not enough people talk about this series. I picked up The Queen of the Tearling, written by Erica Johansson. I've had this trilogy on my shelf for a very long time, so this feels good to like get a longtime TBR book off of my shelf, and something that I feel like is severely underrated, which could potentially be why I haven't picked it up yet. This is an adult fantasy trilogy about a young girl named Kelsey. She is 19 years old at the start of this book. She is like this long-lost princess. She like grew up in like a foreign land, and at the start of this book she is sent with her honor guard to come back and reclaim her throne. Now, people of the royal blood have access to this like jewel magic, I think, is like this mystical, powerful jewel, and it grants her powers. But in doing so, obviously, there's going to be a lot of turmoil. I think there's some assassins that are thrown her way, this evil Red Queen that she must encounter. So I'm pretty excited about it, to be honest. Yeah, it's kind of been this sleeper on my shelf for a while, so this was my pick for underrated read. Okay, so when the wheel landed on mood read, I was like, do I want to just like let the mood strike me once it gets time for me to get to my mood read book? But I did actually pre-pick my mood read book, because this idea struck me for the simple fact that my Kickstarter campaign-backed book, Age of Empire, written by Michael J. Sullivan, just arrived to my house this week. I backed this book. This is the final book, book number 6 of the Legends of the First Empire series. And this is his, like, super prequel series to the Rhaenyra Revelations, one of my favorite book series that I have talked about many times on my channel. So in celebration of this book arriving in my life, I was like, maybe I should just go back to the beginning and read the whole Legends of the First Empire, because I've only read the first 2. Surprisingly, I haven't continued reading, and that's because I kind of forgot a lot about what happened. So I was like, maybe you're going to have to go back and read all 6 of these until you can finally get to this one. But then I was thinking, why stop there when I could go all the way back to the beginning and reread the Rhaenyra Revelations? So that's my plan. I'm actually, for my mood read, I'm going to go back and reread Theft of Swords, and then I'm going to progress through this whole trilogy, and then I'm going to hit up my reread and start my journey to finish up the Legend of the First Empire series. So this is a book series written by Michael J. Sullivan, one of my favorite authors. This is a story about 2 thieves for hire named Royce and Hadrian. They had been framed for the murder of a king, and they end up having to like go on this adventure to clear their name. That's literally just the beginning. That's like the first part of the first book, and then you're going to get into so much more in-depth things in this world. And the reason why I wanted to go back to the Rhaenyra Revelations, aside from the fact that I love it, is that there's so many little Easter eggs that I already encountered in the first 2 books of the Legends of the First Empire, so I want them to be really fresh in my mind so that I can get to this book and catch all of them. You do not need to read this in order to read the other series. I have a whole video on how you can read Michael J. Sullivan, and I still stand by what I say in that video. You don't need to read this in order to read that. It's just what I'm gonna do. There's so many books that I put on my TBR at the beginning of the year that I hadn't yet gotten to. This book is something that I put in my like fantasy books that I want to read in 2020, and it's also a book that I put in my 5-star TBR prediction video for 2020. Even though this is a lengthier book and this magic system is really complex, I want to try and get to The Blinding Knife, written by Brent Weeks. This is book number 2 of the Lightbringer series. I do have a whole review of The Black Prism, which is the first book in this series, on my channel, so you can go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. This is a world where color magic rules all, but that's like the most base explanation of this magic system, because this magic system is like really hard to describe. Certain people are able to wield certain colors, and those colors grant them separate types of powers. It is very rare for someone to encounter the ability to wield 2 colors, even more rare for them to wield more than that. And then of course there is the Prism, who is their like ruler, but like political figurehead, somewhat religious figurehead, who is able to wield all of the colors in the prism. Now, we left the Black Prism first book on such a cliffhanger. The number of twists and turns in that book were insane. So yeah, I really want to get continuing on with this series. Like I said, this was in my 5-star TBR prediction video, so I might as well try for it this month. Book to screen adaptation. Oh, we have a visitor. Good girl, good girl. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Do you want your dragon? I'm so sorry to do this, everyone. But it's like her favorite toy, so she's gonna go ham with the dragon. Let's continue on. This is like literally the only way we're gonna get through this video. Okay, book to screen adaptation. I was actually really excited to get this. Now, I've never actually read Percy Jackson. So this is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, book number 1, The Lightning Thief. I seriously, I am 33 years old and I've never read Percy Jackson. This is a childhood favorite of many, and I know the book to screen adaptation is not a good one. I've never watched it even. But the fact that Rick Riordan is also like, no, don't watch that. Wait till my next adaptation comes out. I'm like, okay, Rick. And he's funny to follow along on Twitter too. Let's see what this is about. All right, adult fantasy. Whew. This is a book that I hauled at the beginning of the year. This is actually a continuation of a series, and I have reviewed the first book already. This is The Dragon Republic, written by R.F. Kuang. We have The Burning God coming out at the very end of the year. This is the second book in the Poppy War trilogy, and we follow a young protagonist, female named Rin, who at the beginning of the first book, she is trying to take a test called the Keiju to set her up for her future career. And then she ends up scoring the highest in her province, which allows her to go to this military academy of Sinigard. And then from that point on, war breaks out across the nation. The Hokuran Empire, I believe is what it's called, if I'm remembering correctly. Whew, there was a lot that happened in the Poppy War. There was a lot that happened at the end. I felt like the end of the Poppy War really set us up for the Dragon Republic, so I'm gonna really have to like brush up my memory on like some of the specific events. Like literally every single content warning you could possibly think of happened in the Poppy War. We'll see what happens in this one. But yeah, adult fantasy, been meaning to get this one ticked off my list for this year, so let's get to it. Obviously, I have been getting very nervous as this wheel kept spinning because I spun, you know, book number 8 ended up being a red, so then it added a 9th book to my TBR, and I was like, you gotta be kidding, please don't keep adding more. Thankfully, the very final spin that I got was not a red, yay, and number 2, it was a graphic novel or manga. Perfect. So I ended up picking up Descender, written by Jeff Lemire and illustrated by Dustin Nguyen. This is something that has been on my shelf for a while. I've heard that it's like really, really heartwarming. but like devastating. I don't know. So let me read the description to you, because this would do it so much better than I could. 10 years after planet-sized robots called harvesters appeared and wreaked havoc across the galaxy, a young android named TIM-21 wakes to find that all robots have been outlawed. But TIM, I'm just gonna call him Tim, my husband's name's Tim. But Tim may hold the secrets to the harvesters in his machine DNA, and he quickly becomes the most wanted robot in the universe. With bounty hunters and threats lurking at every turn, Tim embarks on a mind-blowing adventure through the stars along with his robot dog Bandit and the lumbering mining droid Driller. Honestly, is this like a sci-fi fictionalized version of my husband Tim's life? Because he had a dog named Bandit. I didn't know there was a robot dog named Bandit. Okay, so anyways, this is Descender Volume 1, written by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. This Wheeler TBR scared me. With like how many red spins I had, I was like, there's no end in sight. So when the final book came up that ended up being graphic novel, I was like, oh my god, yes. Let me know what you think of my TBR picks down below. This is gonna be a big one. This is gonna be a big one. Let's see if I actually can make it. I mean, I read a lot of books in May, and I read a lot of books in June. And I feel like I can do this. Like, I should stop with this negative energy. Let me just like expel this negative energy right now. This is a lot, but not impossible. We'll see what happens. Let me know what you think about my picks down below. Have you read any of these? What did you think of them? You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. It's at whatcassread, the same as this channel, so it should be super easy for you to find. And then of course my Goodreads link, that is always listed down below. You know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later. Bye.